Fasting means going without solid foods, and there are many different types of fasting. For example, juice fasting, water fasting, supplement-assisted fasting like the Arise and Shine program, the Master Cleanse, and others.
Well, as the name suggests, the point is to clean the colon. There are different types of colon cleansing, and they all involve inserting a tube into the rectum and flushing the colon with various amounts of water. For example, an enema about 1 to 2 litres, a clismatic about 5 litres, a coloma about 16 litres, and a colonic about 45 to 60 litres. Sometimes the water is mixed with coffee, garlic, aloe vera, or other things to help stimulate and clean the colon.
Several years ago, we worked as yoga teachers at a detox bar in Thailand, and the owner wanted us to be the detox consultants as well, basically helping guests on their detox programs. We were totally against the idea of fasting and colon cleansing at that time, but then we read a book called Cleanse and Purify Thyself by naturopathic Dr. Richard Anderson, and we were immediately convinced that fasting and colon cleansing were necessary and the only way to be truly healthy. From that point on, we promoted fasting and colon cleansing for a few years. We guess we all always do what we think is right at the time, but now we know better, and that's why we're making this video.
I suffered from chronic Candida, which I talk about in another video, and I'll link to it in the description below. And the book we read about cleansing convinced us that fasting and colon cleansing was the cure we were searching for. And we met some raw foodists who were already eating much cleaner than we were at that time, and yet they continued to fast and colon cleanse, which made us feel super dirty by comparison. So after years of eating a standard Western diet, drinking alcohol, smoking, taking lots of pharmaceutical drugs, we became obsessed with the idea of cleaning out our digestive systems. We adopted somewhat of a purity mindset. And finally, we wanted to continue to evolve on our spiritual paths and became convinced that both fasting and eating less were necessary to do so. So, for about a year, we restricted our food intake to only 2 meals a day, thinking that we would have more energy by giving the digestive system less work to do, despite the fact that we were hungry and had no energy or fitness.
Many people's motivation for fasting and colon cleansing is to lose weight, although it was never ours. Of course, you will lose weight because you're not eating, but you will gain it all back and then some, fast. Why? Because deciding to restrict food intake when you're not actually sick causes metabolic damage. Basically, when we fast or restrict our calories, the body goes into starvation mode and begins to store food as fat. That is because the body doesn't understand the mindset of fasting or calorie restriction, and it thinks that it's heading into a real famine, so it goes into starvation mode to ensure its survival. So during a fast, your metabolism slows right down, and when you begin eating after a fast, the body stores much of the food as fat in case of another famine around the corner. In addition to this slower metabolism, people also gain weight after a fast because they have a voracious appetite and will eat just about anything they can get their hands on. From our experience, everybody regains the weight they lose after a fast and then some. We saw people returning to the spa in Thailand over and over again, and each time they came back, they were heavier than their very first visit. And keep in mind that it can take years to correct metabolic damage caused by fasting or calorie restriction. One health professional we know did a 40-day water fast and lost a ton of weight and wrote a book about the experience. We met her years later and she had regained all the weight she lost and was actually borderline obese. When we met her, she was calling out to her overweight boyfriend to save her a piece of the chocolate cake. And at the same time, she was trying to tell us that pasta was really bad for us. So this woman still uses old pictures of herself taken after her fast on her website and social media. This was a real wake-up call for us. We got scammed by the business of fasting, and it was at that point that we started following people who were getting the results that we wanted.
I have done 3 fasts and cleanses. The first 2 were for 7 days each, and the third was for 28 days. and we'll explain more about that later on. Natasha has done 2 fasts and cleanses, and the first was for 7 days and the second was for 28 days. They all involved not eating, combined with either enemas, colomas, or colonics. During the fasts, we felt totally weak and wiped out, physically and emotionally exhausted. Our muscles and joints ached, and walking was a chore. We were obsessively fantasizing and dreaming of eating food. In fact, towards the end of the 28-day program of calorie restriction and fasting, having forced our bodies into starvation and survival mode for so long, the body's need to eat was so strong that, despite the fact that we had already been ethical vegans for more than 6 months, to her utter disgust, Natasha even had cravings for meat.
Our health problems like asthma and allergies persisted, and not only did Lucas Candida not clear up, but it actually got worse. More on that in a moment. Our fitness died, we had no energy to do anything, and it takes a while to regain strength post-fast. We also lost muscle mass and looked basically like prisoners of war. We were so thin that we had to sleep with a pillow under the hip because our bones were protruding so much that it hurt to sleep on our sides. At the end of the 28-day program, my legs were in agony. They were cramping. I couldn't sit still, but I didn't have the energy to walk around too much. It was so painful that I was actually worried, and so I decided to break the fast early with a watermelon. The pain went away immediately. As for metabolic damage and weight gain, here comes the scary part. After my first 7-day fast, I gained 8 kilos in only 4 weeks. I started the 28-day program with an already very low weight in the low 40s due to prior calorie restriction and ended weighing only 39.7 kilos. I'm 5 foot and I now weigh a healthy 48 to 49 kilos depending on the day. Luca also started the 28-day program with an already very low weight in the mid-60s due to prior calorie restriction and ended weighing only 61.9 kilos, and he's 6'1". He now weighs a much healthier 78 kilos and with much more lean muscle mass. We didn't take photos of our bodies during the 28-day cleanse, but here are some photos about 1 week after we had begun eating again. Warning, they look really, really bad.
Unlike myself, Natasha had never suffered from constipation and had always enjoyed very regular bowel movements. However, on both occasions immediately following her extensive periods of colon cleansing, she suffered from very bad constipation. Why? Because when you colon cleanse, the muscles of the colon become lazy, weak, and dependent on the colon cleansing to remove waste. So that when you start eating again but stop colon cleansing, constipation often results. She took lots of probiotics post-cleanse to help with the constipation, but they only made her bloating worse.
When we were fasting and colon cleansing, we had very limited knowledge about how the body actually works. At the time, we thought that all the intense emotions that were surfacing, such as crying outbursts, as well as the moments of perceived heightened spirituality, we became space cadets, were all therapeutic and spiritual benefits. Now we understand that these emotional and spiritual states were simply a direct result of the lack of glucose from carbohydrates to our brains, something we now call being undercarbed.